September 6, 1620, the Pilgrims left from England. After 64 days at sea, they arrived to what is now Cape Cod, Massachusetts. While there, they formed an agreement called the Mayflower Compact. Within this document was America's first experiment with socialism.
You may be wondering, what is socialism? Here are a few definitions to help you follow along. Socialism: a theory or system of social organization that advocates the vesting of the ownership and control of the means of production and distribution of capital, land, etc. in the community as a whole. In Marxist theory, the stage following capitalism and the transition of a society to communism, characterized by the imperfect implementation of collective principles.
Capitalism: an economic system in which investment in and ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange of wealth is made and maintained chiefly by private individuals or corporations, especially as contrasted to cooperatively or state-owned means of wealth.
Communism: a theory or system of social organization based on the holding of all property in common, actual ownership being ascribed to the community as a whole or to the state. A system of social organization in which all economic and social activity is controlled by a totalitarian state dominated by a single and self-perpetuating political party. The principles and practices of the Communist Party.
Hi, I'm Connor.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Mary.
When Barack Obama won the 2008 presidential elections, his promises for hope and change excited America. But what do we really know about Barack Obama? He has been labeled the least transparent president in United States history.
We decided to find out some important information, like who his influences and friends are, what his vision is, and how it will affect America.
Click the links below for full articles and more info.
We hope you enjoy this video.
It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
Barack Hussein Obama II was born in Hawaii on August 4, 1961, to Stanley Ann Dunham and father unknown. Obama lived alone with his mother until the age of 6, where she followed her second husband, Lolo Sotoro, to live in Indonesia. Obama was registered as a Muslim citizen in Indonesia and spent 3 years in a Muslim religious school studying the Quran and saying Islamic prayers.
After 4 years of living in Indonesia, Barack Obama was sent back to Hawaii to live with his grandparents. Here he was introduced to what was his biggest influence, Frank Marshall Davis. Frank Marshall Davis was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party USA, number 47544. He was placed on the Federal Government Security Index, which meant he could be immediately detained or arrested in event of national emergency. He helped organize the communist-controlled ILWU in a failed effort to take over the Hawaiian government in 1949. He wrote for the Chicago Star, a Communist Party USA weekly publication. Davis mentored Barack over the course of a decade. Obama mentions Frank in Dreams from My Father 22 times, but not even once in the audio version.
After graduating high school, Barack Obama enrolled at Occidental College in Los Angeles on a full affirmative action scholarship. He wanted to study the Marxist professors at what was known as the Moscow of Southern California. After 2 years and poor grades, he transferred to Columbia University in New York City. There he joined the communist organization May 19th. They fought against white imperialism, colonialism, and Zionism. He attended their meetings, protests, and seminars. Barack Obama almost completely stopped going to classes. Around the same time, Barack Obama met his second biggest influence, Bill Ayers, at a May 19th event to rally support for Bernadine Dorn, Ayers' wife, who was jailed for refusing to testify about the Brinks robbery. Bill Ayers was part of the Weather Underground, a communist organization responsible for numerous bombings and riots. In 1972, he tried to blow up the Pentagon, and succeeded in 1970 to blow up the New York City Police headquarters, and in 1980, blow up the U.S. Capitol. He also wrote Dreams from My Father, Barack Obama's book.
Barack and Bill had a lot in common. Like Bill's father, Thomas Ayers, and Frank Marshall Davis both knew each other from the Chicago CPUSA. Thomas Ayers was the CEO of Commonwealth Edison and one of the most powerful political brokers in Chicago. He told Barack if he needed anything, just let him know. Bill Ayers told Barack that it was impossible to overthrow the government from the outside. That's why he shifted to academic indoctrination to overthrow the system from within. With that advice, Obama dedicated himself to courses with radical professors. At Columbia University, he studied political Islam with Edward Said. Edward Said, former rep to the Palestine Liberation Organization, was known as a professor of terror because of his relationship with the Palestine Liberation Organization.
In the spring of 1983, Bill Ayers and Obama attended the Socialist Scholar Conference. Their strategy was to inflame the lower and working classes against American corporations. Barack moved back to Chicago as a community organizer with the Midwest Academy, which was founded by 60s radicals from the SDS. The function of the organizer was to rub salt in the wounds of minorities, stir up resentment over economic differences, and mobilize that discontent to take power. They lectured that blacks were the #1 targets and that socialists should use them as a weapon.
The Academy also preached Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals as a blueprint to transform America. Saul Alinsky was an honorary member of Al Capone's gang for 2 years and defined change as a code word for socialism. Sometime after Obama's mentor and some say father, Frank Marshall Davis's death in 1987, Obama was drawn to Reverend Jeremiah Wright Jr. and joined his radical black church and attended his sermons every Sunday.
And then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, not God Bless America, God America, that's in the Bible.
Jeremiah Wright was Obama's pastor for 20 years. He married Michelle and Obama, baptized both of his children, and was offered $150,000 to keep quiet about his socialist views.
After the mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington, died, Obama set his sights on becoming the mayor of Chicago. Bill Ayers told Obama that without a law degree he wouldn't be able to become mayor, but to go to Harvard would be near impossible as Barack graduated without honors in political science. Between Bill Ayers, affirmative action, and Khalid al-Mansour, he was accepted. Khalid al-Mansour, also known as Don Warden, was a former Black Panther, radical Islamist, hid from the FBI with Ayers after the Weathermen bombed Park Police Station, the advisor to Saudi billionaire Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, a Harvard donor, and knew Malcolm X's attorney. Sometime after, Thomas Ayers secured Obama a job at the Davis Minor Law Firm, which represented the Woods Fund. On behalf of Acorn, Barack Obama sued the state of Illinois to enforce the motor voter law, which eliminated the requirement for identification and made it easy to non-existent voters like Mickey Mouse to vote. Later, 8 of the 19 9/11 hijackers were registered under the motor voter law. Later, Obama ran and was elected state senator of Chicago. As senator, he put Reverend Wright on his advisory committee, worked closely with Acorn's network of front groups as well as Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, and voted present 129 times to avoid political liability.
After 5 months as senator, Obama formed a committee to run for president. Obama was invited to speak at the 2004 DNC, which gave him a platform to introduce himself to America. Sometime later, he coined the phrase, hope and change. change from Alinsky's code word for socialist revolution, and hope from Jeremiah Wright's controversial Audacity of Hope speech. For the campaign slogan, Obama decided on Yes We Can, translating Si se puede from Cesar Chavez's migrant workers' strike, also designing his logo similar to the Weather Underground's. After more promises of hope and change, the rest is history. Here are some ways Obama has taken steps to replace American capitalism with socialism.
Well, as you can see, Obama's life and presidency has been shaped by socialist influences. Let's look at the issues now.
In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. Proverbs 14:23.
Let's start with an issue that affects everyone: unemployment. You may be wondering, what does this have to do with me? I'm only 16 years old, and I don't have a job. Well, first, let me say that a month after Obama took office in 2008, the unemployment rate rose to 8% and has stayed there ever since. Also, the amount of long-term unemployed Americans rose from 2.7 million to 5.2 million. Yikes. To top it all off, since 2008, our economy has lost 1.3 million jobs, while 3.6 million more Americans have been added to the SSI disability insurance program. Do you still think that this has nothing to do with me? I may not be looking for a job now, but judging by the rate unemployment is rising, I won't have to worry about getting a job. There won't be one.
Another issue that's going to affect every American is healthcare. Around 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Since then, I've been in and out of hospitals, trying to find ways to cope with it. Over the years, I've learned that a quality doctor is essential. On March 23, 2010, Obama signed what is commonly called Obamacare, or PPACA. Little was known about the controversial bill. The former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said herself,
"But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it."
The majority of Americans didn't want it, and doctors didn't want it. Obamacare will cut Medicare by $716 billion between 2013 and 2022 to pay for the law's $1.9 trillion in new healthcare spending for younger people over the same time frame. Obama also took $750 million out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. And seniors 65 and older are already guaranteed access to health insurance through Medicare, and for lower-income seniors, Medicaid. And on top of it all, he gave IRS $500 million to hunt down and tax people without health care. If you decide you don't want Obamacare, you'll be forced to pay a penalty depending on your income. Obamacare will drastically reduce innovation and quality of healthcare. The government control will kill most improvements currently being made in treatments and care. Without competition, there is no incentive to improve, and most likely treatments will be mandated by the government, leaving consumers with no options as to the type of treatment they receive. And besides, why would we want another welfare program that will drain the economy and push more into debt?
Speaking of debt, Obama promised to cut the deficit in half, but doubled it. And he spent $3.6 trillion, but only brought back $2.3 trillion. The debt collected from the first president to the 42nd president was only $5.6 trillion, but from George W. Bush to Barack Hussein Obama, it went well over $16 trillion. Gas prices have also been rising. Do you remember the price of gas back in 2008? It was $1.85. Now it's about $4 and rising. Obama also stopped the Keystone Pipeline that would bring oil to the U.S. from Canada and make us less dependent on the Middle East. He stopped drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and gave tax dollars to other countries like Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico to drill offshore.
The definition of the Constitution is the basic fundamental law of this state, which sets out how the state will be organized and the powers and authorities of the government between different political units and citizens. How has Obama done upholding the Constitution? Obama issued a Soviet-style order to Catholic and other faith-based institutions to violate their beliefs and provide insurance covering abortifications, contraceptives, and sterilizations. therefore ignoring the First Amendment and violating religious freedoms. He appointed agency czars without Senate approval, violating Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. This gives the president the power to appoint ambassadors, judges, and top agency officials, but only with the advice and consent of the Senate. Mr. Obama has appointed without Senate approval more than 24 czars in federal agencies. He's violated Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution by forcing Americans to buy health insurance. It gives Congress the power to regulate commerce and levy taxes. It does not force Americans to engage in commerce. During policy debates in 2008, the White House denied that the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate was a tax, but in court the administration argued that it was a tax after all. In a shocking ruling, Chief Justice John Roberts bought the logic, upholding this unconstitutional monstrosity. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution states that the President shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Mr. Obama refused to enforce laws that he didn't like. Mr. Obama directed Attorney General Eric Holder Jr. to ignore the Defense of Marriage Act and even worked against it in the federal courts. Mr. Holder also suspended newly enacted photo ID voter laws in Texas and South Carolina. The Justice Department's subdivision of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms walked more than 2,000 firearms to drug gangs across the border to Mexico. U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed along with at least 100 Mexicans. The administration has shown contempt for Congress, and Mr. Holder denied knowing about the debacle despite evidence indicating otherwise. This is not faithfully executing the law or defending America's sovereign borders. After looking at these issues, it doesn't look too good. The Mayflower Compact required that all profits and benefits that are got by trade, working, fishing, or any other means were placed in the common stock of the colony. Further, it required that all such persons as are of this colony are to have their meat, drink, apparel, and all provisions out of this common stock. People were required to put in the common stock everything they could and take out only what they needed. William Bradford, the governor at the time, wrote History of Plymouth Plantation. In it, he wrote that young men that were most able and fit for labor and service complained about being forced to spend their time and strength to work for other men's wives and children. Since the strong or man of parts had no more division of victuals and clothing than he that was weak, the strong men simply refused to work, and the amount of food produced was never adequate.
In fact, the colony went hungry for years as strong men refused to work hard and theft of crops still in the ground ran rampant. Bradford wrote that the colony was riddled with corruption and discontent. The crops were small because much was stolen both by day and night before it became scarce eatable. The harvests of 1621 and 1622 were adequate enough so that all their hungry bellies filled, but that did not last. Deaths from malnutrition continued into the next year. After the poor harvest of 1622, the colony brainstormed for a way to raise more corn and obtain a better crop. The solution was simple. In 1623, Bradford gave each household a parcel of land and told them they could keep what they produced or trade it away as they saw fit.
Bradford reported, "Instead of famine, now God gave them plenty, and the face of things was changed to the rejoicing of the hearts of many, for which they blessed God." By 1624, the colony was producing so much food that it began exporting corn. The socialistic experiment that had failed them was abandoned and replaced with capitalism. That turned the colonists away from failure and forward into success and growth. And this move away from socialism, along with the resulting prosperity, is what makes America special.
Other countries like India and China embraced socialism and failed. South Korea, Indonesia, and Chile are embracing globalization, modernization, and capitalism, the American recipe, and are growing at 3 to 5 times the rate of the U.S.
For even when we were here with you, we would give you this command. If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10.
Well, that's the end of our video.
We hope this video will help you to understand how Obama's past will shape his future as a president.
Remember, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it.
I'm Ray Comfort. I'm Jewish, and I'm deeply concerned that a generation is forgetting one of the greatest tragedies in the history of the human race. Adolf Hitler sanctioned the murder of 11 million people, including 6 million Jews.